He agreed that his father had suffered acute depression for a considerable time and stated that neither he nor his sister, Madame Simone Corlander, had any doubt that the letter found on their father's desk after his death had been a suicide note. When the court closed, Monsieur Guy Lamanet, president of the Island Assembly, the Le Roque Parliament, paid tribute to the late Monsieur de Courvel's services to the island and spoke of the lasting pleasure and illumination he had given to the students of history. At the foot of the column, an editor's note read, "An appreciation of the work of Maurice de Courvel by his fellow historian John Cummings appears on page 8. I was hardly aware that Bill Adamson had sat down opposite me. It was as though a door had opened and I was looking through it down a long tunnel into my own remote boyhood. I could see the gardens at Saint-Michel and the plantations stretching away beyond on all sides, and the giant catalpa tree on the broad lawn in front of the house. In my ears was the sound of the sea, mingling with the hum of insects. The feeling of those far-off days was strong within me, a feeling of security in a tight, closed world in which time was in abeyance, the true and rightful feeling of childhood. I was torn from it by a reality that jarred. "Did you know about it?" With an effort, I shifted my gaze to Adamson's face. "No," I said. "No, I hadn't heard. I've been away." "I know. That's why I—" He didn't finish. He looked uncomfortable for a second and then took a packet of cigarettes from his pocket, handed me one and said, "If this is the first time you've heard about it, you won't want to discuss it now. I can get lost if you like. Or else we can talk shop. Quite a lot's been happening since you went away." I nodded, grateful to him, and he plunged into a long narrative of recent events in our respective spheres. After I left Adamson, I took a taxi the rest of the way to the office, and on the way tried to get my thoughts in order. In front of Adamson, I'd felt both guilty and foolish. It wasn't just that the news was my business and I hadn't heard that one of the scholars of his day had committed suicide. It was something more personal. I felt that somehow I had failed Maurice de Courvel. At the same time, I resented being told of his death by a more or less casual acquaintance. Unreasonable, since I'd lost touch with almost everyone on the island in the last 10 years, and since I'd only just flown into town. But then there was rage, bitter, seething rage, with Corby, my editor. Damn him to hell! Why hadn't he told me yesterday when I'd phoned him? Why? Simple. Because Corby was a good editor, and yesterday I was due to wind up operations by attending as grande's guest at one of those lavish parties film people like to hold when they finally get a big film into the can. I had been expected to get some nice last-minute angles at that party, and Corby had meant to have them. And while I had sat tied up in paper streamers, watching a real live Spanish matador execute the coup de grace on a boar's head on top of a table strewn with dirty plates and half-empty glasses, Maurice de Courvel had lain under a sheet in a mortuary with a bullet wound in him that they said he'd put there himself. To hell with Corby. It was immaterial there was nothing I could have done. He could have told me just the same. To hell with him. Adamson had insisted on me keeping the paper, and now I remembered the appreciation by Cummings and turned to it. It was the usual thing, efficient, well-written and scholarly, cool without being indifferent, but it conveyed nothing of the real Maurice, for the reason, no doubt, that Cummings had never known the real Maurice. When I left the taxi, I went through the foyer of our office building like one of Sitting Bull's arrows. I wanted to get to Corby's inner sanctum before General Office bonhomie had softened my mood. In the event, I'd said very little. Corby took the wind out of my sails by being unusually remorseful and apologetic. I knew this only meant that he wanted something, but as I wanted more or less the same thing, I decided it wasn't the moment to stand on principles. What Corby wanted was for me to go to the island, get the facts on Maurice and do him something rather special by way of an obituary. He knew my connections with the island and sensed a good story with strong elements of mystery and lots of drama about what he called feudal lords, the last of their breed, governing from privileged positions with arbitrary powers. They governed well, I pointed out. No doubt, but today that in itself constitutes a rarity. And besides, Angus, where else in the civilised world would you find another island paradise entirely